How did she get the keys to my house? I watched her move around the main living room, but she didn't seem to be looking at anything in particular. Then she headed to the kitchen, where she opened several cupboards and took pictures with her phone. Pictures of my cupboards. That's when she did something that made my blood run cold. She went straight into my bedroom. The camera showed her opening my drawers, rummaging through my wardrobe, and even lifting my mattress as if she was looking for something. She took more pictures, lots of pictures. Then she went into the bedroom she had taken over and began measuring the windows with a tape measure she had brought with her. She took detailed notes in a notebook, measuring every wall, every corner. But what really alarmed me was when she went out into the garden and started walking around the outbuilding, taking pictures from every angle. She approached the windows and tried to peer inside. Then she took more notes. This wasn't just curiosity, it was planning. I drove home as fast as I dared, but by the time I got there, Saul was already gone. There was no trace of her being there, except for the footage on my phone. That night, I scrutinized every minute of video. Solon had been at my house for nearly 2 hours, documenting every corner. But to what end? The answer came on Sunday. This time, the motion alert went off at 10 a.m. but it wasn't just Solene. 3 people were with her, her parents and an older man I didn't recognize. I watched them on my phone from the church I had attended to try to maintain some semblance of normalcy in my life. What I saw made me leave Mass in the middle of the sermon. Sol gave a thorough tour of the house, but not like the previous time with her parents. This time, she spoke to the strange man as if he were a professional. He took notes as she spoke and occasionally pointed to different areas of the house. I couldn't hear what he was saying through the cameras, but the body language was clear. This was some kind of consultation. When they arrived in the garden, Sol led the man straight to the outbuilding. She opened the door with a key that I had definitely not given her, and the 3 adults entered. The man spent several minutes examining the space, taking measurements, testing the electrical connections. Then he pulled out a tablet and started showing Solene something on the screen. My hands were shaking so much I almost dropped my phone. When they finally left, 2 hours later, I was sitting in the church parking lot, trying to process what I had seen. These were not casual visits. Solon had the keys to my house and used them freely when she knew I wouldn't be there. But the most disturbing thing was the systematic nature of it all. The photos, the measurements, the notes, and now this meeting with an unknown professional. It wasn't impulsive, it was a plan. That evening, Tibot called me. "Hey Mom. How was your weekend?" "Quiet, did I lie?" "And yours?" "Oh, as usual, Solene and I discussed your situation again." There's that word again, my situation. What kind of conversation? "Well, we're worried about you. Alone in this big house, we've been exploring some options that might be better for everyone." My stomach nodded. "What kind of option?" "Just preliminary ideas, Mom. But we wanted to ask if you'd be open to making some changes that could benefit you and us all." THBO, this is my house. I bought it with my own money. It's in my name and I plan to live there. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Of course, Mom. We just want to make sure you're comfortable and safe." After hanging up, I sat back on my deck, but this time, the sound of the ocean didn't soothe me at all. Tiba's words echoed in my mind. Changes that could benefit us all. All of them, or just them? I reviewed the recordings once more, dwelling on the image of the unknown man taking action in my addiction. Who was he? And exactly what kind of change was he planning? One thing was for sure. I needed more information before it was too late. The answer about the mystery man's identity came sooner than expected and was worse than anything I could have imagined. On Tuesday morning, as I was putting my plants to bed in the front garden, I saw an unfamiliar car pull up in front of my house. It was a sleek black sedan of the kind used by professionals late at night. My heart started beating faster when I recognized the driver. It was the same man who had measured my addiction on Sunday. I pretended to continue tending to my plants while he got out of the car and walked to my door. He was a man in his 50s, dressed in an expensive suit and carrying a leather briefcase. Everything about him screamed lawyer or accountant. He rang 3 times before I decided to answer. Did Mrs. Travers ask when I opened the door? Yes. How can I help you? My name is Grégoire Allan. I am a chartered accountant. Your daughter-in-law Soline has contacted me regarding some financial matters related to this property. I kept my expression neutral, though inside I was screaming. I'm not sure what you're talking about, Mr. Allan. I haven't requested any accounting services. He frowned as he looked at some notes in his notebook. That's strange. Mrs. Blanchard told me that you were interested in exploring options to convert part of your property into a vacation rental unit, specifically the back building. Blanchard, Soline's maiden name. I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding, I replied cautiously. I have no interest in renting out any part of my property. Grégoire Allan now seemed genuinely confused. But Mrs. Blanchard showed me around the property last Sunday. She told me that you had authorized her to explore financial options and that you were too busy to meet with me personally. The chill I felt was nothing like the ocean breeze. What kind of financial option? Well, based on these figures, you could generate between €1,100 and exactly €400 per week by renting out the rear unit during peak season. That would be around €14,000 during the 3 summer months. Quite lucrative, considering the beachfront location. My mind was racing. And what else? What did Mrs. Blanchard tell you? She explained that you were considering moving into the smaller unit to maximize the rental income from the main house. Very clever indeed. Many elderly homeowners make similar arrangements to supplement their retirement income. There you have the complete plan laid out by an accountant who thought he was helping an entrepreneurial grandmother. Mr. Allan. Slowly, I think Mrs. Blanchard has deceived you. She has no authority to make decisions regarding my property and I have absolutely no interest in moving into the outbuilding. Her face turned pale. Oh my God! Are you saying she had no right to contact me? Exactly. After Grégoire Allan apologized profusely and left, I sat in my kitchen shaking. It wasn't just rage I felt, but a betrayal so profound it physically hurt. Soline hadn't just planned to take over my home. She'd begun putting that plan into action, using professionals to legitimize her scheme. But what role did Thibault play in all of this? The answer came that very afternoon. I was in my bedroom when the motion alert went off on my phone. This time, it was Thibault and Soline together, entering through the front door as if it were their own home. I hid in my closet with the phone, watching the live stream as he set up shop early in my living room. Have you spoken to Allan today? I heard Thibault ask. Yeah, but there was a problem, Soline replied. Your mother told him she didn't have permission to contact him. ! Do you think she suspects something? I don't know, but we need to speed things up. We can't risk her finding out the full plan before it's ready. Thibault sighed heavily. I'm still uncomfortable with all this, Soline. Seriously, are we still having this conversation? Celine's voice turned cold. Tiba, your mother is sitting on a gold mine here. This property is worth at least 4,500 euros. And she's wasting her potential by living here alone like a hermit. But this is her home, Celine. She worked her whole life to buy it, and we've worked our whole lives too. What do we have to show for it? A rented apartment and jobs that barely cover the bills. Meanwhile, she's here alone in this mansion by the beach. It's not a mansion. That's not the point, quote. Celine's voice rose. The point is that we have to think about our future, the future of our children when we have them. Your mother won't live forever. Wouldn't you rather we enjoy this property now when we can all enjoy it? Quote. Rather than wait for her death, a long silence followed. When Thibaut finally spoke, his voice sounded defeated. And if she doesn't cooperate, then we'll have to be more creative. I've already spoken to my cousin Chloe, the one who works in social services. She says there are ways to demonstrate that an elderly person can no longer live independently, safely. My blood ran cold. Social services. What kind of ways? Documenting incidents of confusion, forgetfulness, questionable financial decisions. Chloe says if we can establish a pattern of cognitive decline, we could request a competency assessment. So, what does that sound like? Protecting your mother from herself. THBO, look at her objectively. She bought a chair without consulting anyone. She moved here on her own with no real plans for maintenance or safety. These aren't signs of declining judgment, they're signs of independence. Call it what you want. But Chloe says if we can document enough incidents of impaired judgment, we could get her guardianship. Temporarily, of course, just until we can make sure she's living in a safer, age-appropriate environment. My hands were shaking so much I almost dropped my phone. They were talking about declaring me incompetent, stripping me of my legal capacity to make my own decisions. And where would she live? Tiba asked in a small voice. Well, after all the research I've done, I think the outbuilding would be perfect for her with some minor renovations. Sure, we could turn it into a cozy little apartment. She'd have her privacy, but we'd be nearby to supervise her, and the main house would become our family home, of course. And as we discussed, we could rent out rooms during peak season to generate additional income. It's a win-win situation. Thibaut, your mother gets care and supervision. We get a home and a source of income. And the property is used to its full potential. There was a twisted logic to his plan that made me sick to my stomach. They'd thought of everything, even how to make it look like he was doing me a favor. How long would take all that? THBO asked. Chloe said if we started documenting incidents now, we could have a solid case in 3 to 6 months. Especially if we could show that she was making irrational or dangerous financial decisions. For example, she spent almost all her retirement money on this house. That could be construed as financial recklessness, especially for someone on a fixed income. It was my money, my life savings, my decision. There's also the fact that she lives alone on a beachfront property, which is inherently risky for an elderly person. Storms, intruders, medical emergencies, with no one nearby to help. Every point Solon mentioned was another nail in the coffin of my independence. I could see exactly how he would present their case. Apolline Travers, 62-year-old woman, making reckless decisions, living dangerously, needing protection from her own recklessness. I need time to think about this, the boss said. We don't have much time, THBO. The longer we wait, the more opportunities she has to do something that complicates our plans. We already had the incident with Alon today. I know, it's just too much. This is our future, Solon said firmly. And I'm not going to let it go because of misplaced feelings of guilt. They left 20 minutes later, leaving me sitting in my dressing room in complete shock. Not only did he want to be my home, he wanted to destroy my mental competence to get it. And the scariest thing of all is that they had a specific plan to do it. The next few days were a nightmare of constant surveillance. Every time my phone rang, every time I heard a car in the driveway, my heart would race. I knew Celine and Thibaut would come back. And I knew that when they did, they would begin to implement their plans to destroy my mental credibility. I didn't have to wait long. On Friday morning, while I was in the garden as I was trimming my roses, a station wagon pulled up in my driveway. It was Thibaut, but he wasn't alone. There was a middle-aged woman with him whom I didn't recognize, and he was carrying binders and documents. Mom! Thibaut greeted me with a smile that seemed too bright. I've brought you someone I want you to meet. The woman was slim, with short brown hair and a professional smile that immediately put me on alert. She was wearing a navy blazer and had an ID card hanging from her neck. Mrs. Travers, I'm Chloe Blanchard, a social worker for the department. Your son was worried about you and asked me to come and pay you a wellness visit. This is Solon's cousin, just as he had planned. I don't need a wellness visit, I replied calmly, though I was fuming inside. I'm perfectly fine. Of course I am, Chloe said in that condescending voice she probably used with all the elderly. These are just routine visits to make sure our elderly residents have all the resources they need. Thibaut intervened quickly. Mom, they're just trying to help. We can come in and talk. I had no choice but to do so without seeming suspicious or aggressive. I led them to the living room, where Chloe immediately began taking notes on everything she saw. This is a beautiful house, she commented, but her eyes were cataloging every detail. How long have you lived here? 3 weeks. And before that, an apartment in Bordeaux. And what motivated you to move here? It was a seemingly innocent question, but I could see where she was going with this. I wanted to live by the ocean when I retire. I understand. And have you discussed this decision with your family? Thibaut shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Mom, there's nothing wrong with you buying the house. Chloe just wants to understand your situation. My situation? Chloe interjected gently. We just want to make sure you have all the support you need to live independently here. Do you have any friends in the area? Do you know your neighbors? I just moved in. I'm slowly getting to know people. Sure. And in terms of medical care, have you established relationships with local doctors? Every question felt like a little trap. If I said I hadn't found a doctor yet, I'd seem irresponsible. If I said yes, he'd ask me for specific details that I didn't have. I'm in the process of transferring my medical records. Chloe noted something. And financially, are you comfortable with the costs of maintaining a property of this size? Very comfortable. Excellent. Thibaut mentioned that you used a significant portion of your retirement savings for the purchase. Does that worry you in terms of future financial security? There's the first bombshell. Thibaut had provided information about my finances. My finances are my business, I replied firmly. Of course, Chloe said quickly. We just want to make sure you have access to resources if you need them in the future. The visit lasted another 45 minutes with Chloe asking seemingly innocent questions about my daily routine, my emergency plans, my social support network. Thibaut would occasionally add comments that were supposedly supportive but actually fed into Chloe's concerns. Mom has always been independent, he said, sometimes to the point of being stubborn about accepting help. Or has a habit of doing things his own way, even when it's not the most practical decision. After they left, I sat in my kitchen shaking with rage. Not only had they begun their documentation campaign, but Tybalt was actively participating. My own son was helping build a case against me, but that wasn't the only visit that week. On Monday, another unfamiliar car pulled into my driveway. This time, it was an older man who introduced himself as Dr. Leon Vasseur, a geriatrician. Dr. Vasseur, I was confused, I don't have an appointment with you. Your daughter-in-law, Celine Blanchard, contacted me. She said she was concerned about some changes in your behavior and thought you might benefit from an evaluation. My stomach churned. What kind of changes? Well, according to these notes, there had been a few incidents of confusion, questionable financial decisions, and an increasing tendency toward social isolation. Every accusation was a carefully constructed lie. I haven't had any incidents of confusion, I said firmly. Of course, these are just family concerns, very common when there are major life transitions, like moving to a new area. Dr. Vasseur was more subtle than Chloe, but just as dangerous. These questions seemed conversational, but he was assessing my mental state with each answer. What year is it? 2023. And who is the president? I answered all these basic orientation questions correctly, but I could tell he was taking notes on my level of cooperation, my attitude toward the assessment, my awareness of my own situation. Have you noticed any changes in your memory lately? No. And your family, have they noticed any changes? You'd have to ask them. He noted something about defensiveness and lack of awareness. Can you tell me about your decision to buy this house? That was another trap. If I sounded too impulsive, it would come across as an irrational decision. If I sounded too calculated, I might come across as obsessive. I wanted to live by the ocean for my retirement. I saved money for years to be able to do this. And have you discussed this decision with your family? It's my money and my decision. No more notes about defensiveness and isolation from family life. After Dr. Vasseur left, I called my own doctor in Bordeaux. Dr. Isabelle Caron had been my doctor for 15 years. Apolline, how are you? How's life at the beach? Isabelle, I need your help. Someone is trying to have me declared mentally incompetent. I explained the entire situation to her. Dr. Caron listened silently, occasionally making noises of understanding or disgust. Apolline, this sounds like financial abuse of an elderly person, she finally said. Have you considered contacting a lawyer? They haven't done anything legally yet. They're just building a case. Well, I can help you medically. I'll mail you a comprehensive cognitive assessment, quote, that you had 6 months ago as part of your retirement screening. The results were completely normal. I will also document your current mental state during this call. It was a relief to know that I at least had a medical ally, but I knew that Sol and Thibaut would not stop there. I was not mistaken. On Wednesday, I received a call from my bank. Mrs. Travers, we have a question regarding recent activity on your account. My heart stopped. What type of activity? We received a request from someone identifying themselves as your son, inquiring about the status of your account and recent transactions, specifically regarding the purchase of your home. Did you provide him with any information? No, of course not, but we wanted to confirm whether you have authorized anyone to access your account information. Absolutely not. Perfect. We just wanted to verify. We also wanted to let you know that the person mentioned concerns about your ability to manage your finances and asked about our protocols for reporting suspicious financial activity from elderly clients. The audacity left me speechless. Thoth had gone to the bank to try to cast doubt on my financial competence. Is there anything else I should know? I asked. Well, he also asked about the process for obtaining power of attorney over the accounts of clients who might be experiencing cognitive decline. That was the end goal of all their plans. Power of attorney, total control over my finances. That evening, as I reviewed the camera footage from the past few days, I saw something that made me sick. During one of the visits that I hadn't noticed in real time, Solon had brought a small camera and filmed every room in my house, focusing particularly on anything that seemed untidy or unkempt. She was documenting evidence of my supposed inability to maintain my home. It was time to fight back, but first I needed dead proof of their activities, because it was one thing to know what that he was planning and something completely different to be able to prove it. For the next 2 weeks, it became a game of cat and mouse. Sol and Tiba continued their spontaneous visits, each accompanied by different professionals who were supposedly there to help. A nutritionist who assessed my cooking and expressed concern about my inadequate nutrition based on what she found in my refrigerator. A physical therapist who noted my mobility issues after I casually mentioned that my back hurt from all the gardening. Every visit was meticulously documented. Every interaction was designed to create evidence of my supposed incompetence. But I, too, was documenting everything. Cameras captured every visit, every whispered conversation between Celine and Thaba when he thought I couldn't hear them. Every moment they were coordinating their stories, and it was during one of these recordings that I heard something that changed everything. It was a Thursday afternoon. When Tybalt and Solon arrived with someone new, a man in a suit who introduced himself as Maître Victor Delmas, an elder law attorney. Ah, Mrs. Travers, Maître Delmas said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Your family is concerned about your well-being and has sought my advice on some legal options that could protect you. I don't need legal protection, I replied firmly. Of course, no one is suggesting otherwise, but as a precautionary measure, your son and daughter-in-law have explored the possibility of setting up a trust for your assets with them as administrator. This would ensure that your finances are protected and well managed, a trust with them as administrator. In other words, complete control over my money during my lifetime. I'm not interested, let me be clear. Maître Delmas exchanged a look with Thibault. I understand your reservations, but given some of the reports I've received about recent financial decisions that could be considered imprudent. What does that have to do with it? Well, buying this property. For example, using almost all of your retirement savings for a single investment is generally considered financially unwise for someone on a fixed income. THBO leaned forward. Mom, we're just trying to protect you. If something were to happen to you, if you needed long-term care, you wouldn't have the resources available. Health insurance doesn't cover everything, Solon interjected. Long-term care costs can be devastating. If you had to sell this house in a hurry, you could lose money if the market is down. Maître Delmas nodded gravely. That's exactly why a trust would be beneficial. Your assets would be protected. But you would still have access to the income for your daily needs under your supervision, I added, under professional administration, Maître Delmas corrected. Of course, as a beneficiary of the trust, you would have rights and protections. I knew exactly what kind of rights I would have. The right to ask permission to access my own money. I won't sign anything today, I finally said. Of course not. Mr. Delmas said quickly. These are important decisions that require thought, but I suggest you don't wait too long. The benefits of proactive planning are significant. Quote. After they left, I sat in my kitchen, feeling defeated. Their plan was brilliant in its simplicity. Using legitimate professionals to make their actions appear responsible and necessary. Who would question an elder law attorney who recommended financial protections for an elderly woman? But then, I remembered something Mr. Delmas had said. Some of the reports I received. What report? From whom? The answer came 2 days later. It was Saturday morning when I received a call that changed everything. Ms. Travers, this is Celine Girotte from the Senior Services Department. We have received several reports of concern regarding your well-being. My blood ran cold. Several reports. Yes, ma'am, from family members, health professionals, and even some neighbors. The concerns include personal neglect, financial decisions, careless behavior, and possible cognitive decline. Neighbors. Which neighbor? I can't give specific names, but the concerns have been consistent across multiple sources. Lies. I didn't know my neighbors well enough for them to be legitimate concerns, which meant someone had contacted them posing as my neighbor. I need to schedule an in-home assessment, Gyro continued. That's standard procedure when we receive these types of reports. What if I decline? I hope you don't, Mrs. Travers. A refusal to cooperate could be taken as further evidence of impaired judgment. It was a perfect dead end. If I cooperated, they wouldn't turn everything they found against me. If I didn't cooperate, they used my refusal as evidence of incompetence. When? How about next Tuesday at 10 a.m.? After I hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. They had escalated their campaign to the official level. Department of Social Services was now involved based on multiple reports they had fabricated themselves. But then, something clicked in my mind. They had made a mistake. If they were going to officially document everything, then so was I, and I had something they didn't know I had, video evidence of their entire plan. I spent the rest of the weekend preparing. I contacted my own lawyer, someone completely independent of the one that THBO and Solon had brought. I sent him copies of all the recordings and explained the whole situation to him. Apolline, my lawyer, Olivier Marchand, told me, this is a classic case of financial abuse of an elderly person. The fact that you recorded all their planning is extraordinary, but we have to be very careful about how we handle this. What do you recommend? Let them proceed with the assessment on Tuesday. Cooperate fully. Be the sane and competent person you have ever been. In the meantime, I will prepare a legal response that includes all your evidence, and then we will confront them with the truth. The whole truth. Tuesday came too quickly. Celine Giraud showed up at exactly 10 a.m. accompanied by an assistant who carried a tablet to document the assessment. For hours, they inspected every inch of my house, checking my refrigerator, my medications, my clothes. They asked questions about my daily routine, my finances, my social relationships. Have you noticed any changes in your memory lately? Asked Celine Giraud. No, your family has expressed concerns about your well-being. Yes, but I believe their concerns are unfounded. Can you explain why you spent most of your retirement savings on this property? Quote. It was the same question everyone else had asked, phrased in the same way, designed to make my decision seem irrational because I wanted to live by the ocean for my retirement and had enough money to do so comfortably. Did you consider the long-term financial implications? Sure, I have a stable retirement income and limited expenses. The decision was financially sound. After I finished, Celine Giraud sat down with me in my living room. Ms. Travers, based on what I have observed today, I see no immediate evidence of personal neglect or serious cognitive impairment. However, some of your recent decisions raise questions about your judgment. What kind of questions? The decision to move here without establishing a local social support network, the significant expenditure of your savings, the apparent resistance to family involvement in your financial decisions. They were all signs of social isolation and impaired judgment. It was unbelievable. They had turned my independence into a pathology. Quote, I'm going to recommend follow-up evaluations, Giraud continued, a full neuropsychological evaluation and a financial consultation with a certified planner. And if those evaluations show that I'm fully competent, then we'll close the case. But Mrs. Travers, I hope you'll seriously consider your family's concerns. He often sees things that we can't detect in a single visit. After they left, I called Maître Olivier Marchand. Quote, how did it go? He asked. Exactly as we planned. They're going to order more evaluations, but I think it's time to show our cards. I agree. I've prepared a formal letter for Thibaut and Solon as well as copies of all the video evidence. We're giving them 48 hours to cease all activities or we'll file formal charges. Charges? Why? Fraud. Conspiracy to commit financial abuse of an elderly person. False reporting to government agencies. With the evidence you're on, we could send them to prison. It was time for Celine and Thibaut to learn that they had severely underestimated their victim. But before Master Marchand sent the letter, I wanted a final confrontation. I wanted to see their faces when they realized that I knew everything about their plan from the beginning. I told Thibaut that I needed to talk to him and Celine about something important. They were to come over Friday night for a serious family discussion. He had no idea how serious would she be. Friday night arrived with a storm that was sending waves crashing violently against the shore. It was fitting, considering the storm I was about to unleash in my own living room. Thibaut and Celine arrived exactly at 7 p.m. as I had requested. They both seemed tense, probably wondering if I had discovered something about their activities. Solon carried a small recorder in her purse, no doubt planning to document anything she could use against me. Hey, Mom, Thibaut said, kissing me on the cheek with the same slyness he had perfected over the past few weeks. What did you want to talk about? Have a seat, I said calmly, gesturing to the couch. We have a lot to talk about. I sat in sync in my favorite chair, the tablet on my lap. It had been 2 months since I'd installed the cameras, and I had over 50 hours of video evidence of their activities. Before we begin, I said, I want you to know that everything we say tonight is being recorded. Solon sat up straight immediately. Recorded? Why? To protect me. I've had some memory problems over the past 20 years, I lied deliberately, watching as their eyes lit up with interest. My doctor says it's important to document important conversations. It was the perfect trap. If he protested the recording, it would seem like he was hiding something. If he didn't protest, everything he said would be recorded permanently. Sure, Thibaut said quickly. We understand completely. Excellent. Now, I want to address some concerns I've had regarding your behavior over the past few weeks. Solon frowned. Our behavior? Yes, you see, I've noticed that you've had many different professionals come to my home. Social workers, doctors, lawyers, accountants, all with similar stories about their concern for my well-being. THBO fidgeted uncomfortably. Mom, we're just trying to help. I know, Tib, and I appreciate your concern, but it got me thinking about my situation here. I lifted the tablet, pretending to look over some notes. In reality, I was opening the camera app. I decided that maybe you were right, that this house is too big for me. I saw them exchange a quick, hopeful glance. Really? Celine asked, trying to keep her voice neutral. Yes. I've been thinking about your suggestions about the outhouse out back. That might be a viable solution. They were now having a hard time containing their excitement. Mom, how wise of you to your share, THBO said. I think you could really be happy there and we would be here to help you with anything you need. Exactly, Solon added. And we could handle all the maintenance of the main house, the finances, all those stressful things. Speaking of finances, I said no Chalam, Master Damas mentioned something about a fiduciary. Yes, Solon said eagerly. That would be the perfect way to protect your assets while ensuring you have everything you need with you as the trustee. Well yes, we are the Apolline family. Who else could you trust? I smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. That's an interesting question. Celine, who can I trust? I tapped the tablet screen, and the video recording began playing on the big screen TV I had connected earlier. Their own voices filled the room. So, we'll have to be more creative. I've already spoken to my cousin Chloe, the one who works in social services. She says there are ways to demonstrate that an elderly person can no longer live independently, safely. The color drained from both their faces. What is this? Tiba whispered. This, I said calmly, is the two of you plotting to have me declared mentally incompetent so you can rob my house. The recording continued, showing their discussion about documenting incidents of confusion, using social services to build a case against me, and turning my independence into evidence of mental decline. Mom, can I explain? Quote. The bot began, but I raised a hand to ground him. Let me continue, there's more. I cut to the footage of Solon doing the tour with the accountant talking about turning my house into a rental property while relegating me to the outhouse. Then the video of him discussing forcing me to sign a power of attorney. By the time I finished showing the most damning evidence, Celine was crying and Tiba looked like he was about to throw up. Mom, I'm sorry, the boss said in a broken voice. I never meant for it to go this far. But it did go this far, didn't it? I replied. Involving social services, having doctors come in to evaluate me, making false reports about my mental state. Do you know that making false reports to government agencies is a serious offense? Quote. Solon finally found her voice. Apolline, you have to understand. We were just worried about you. Worried, I laughed, but there was no mirth in it. Solon, in one of those recordings, you literally said that I wasn't going to live forever and that you wanted to enjoy my property now. Rather than wait for me to die, she turned even paler. I have over 50 hours of video evidence, I continued. Your complete plans to declare me incompetent, steal my house, and control my finances. It's all documented in high definition. Quote. THBO leaned forward, head in hands. What are you going to do? Is an excellent question, THBO. My lawyer thinks I have a solid case for prosecution, criminal charges. Fraud, conspiracy, to commit financial abuse of an elderly person. False reporting, it's pretty certain you could both be sentenced to prison. Solon began to sob for real. Please, Apolline, we have jobs, a reputation. This would ruin us. Since you tried to ruin me, I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the storm. The waves were huge, crashing against the shore with a force I could feel through the glass. However, I said, turning to them, I am willing to make a deal. They both looked at me with desperate hope. You will never contact me again. You will never set foot on my property again. You will contact every professional you brought here and you will retract every concern you expressed about my mental well-being. You will do so immediately and you will document his retractions for me. Though nodded vigorously. Yes, of course. Plus, I continued. You're going to return the keys to my house that you somehow obtained without my permission. Sol reached into her bag and pulled out a set of keys, placing them on the coffee table with trembling hands. And then, Tiba asked. After that, I'll never see you again. We'll consider this case over as long as you meet all my conditions. And if we don't? Solon asked quietly. Then my lawyer will file criminal charges immediately. And trust me, after everything you've done, I'll have no qualms about sending you to prison. They drove off that night in the storm, defeated and destroyed. THBO turned around once as he got to his car as if he was going to say something. But Solon pushed him in and they drove off. Over the next 2 weeks, they met every one of my conditions. Dr. Vasseur called to apologize for the misunderstanding regarding my assessment. Chloe Blanchard from Social Services received a formal retraction of all previously expressed concerns. The attorney, Maitre Delmas, was informed that these services were no longer needed. Celine Girat from Senior Services called to inform me that all complaints against me had been withdrawn by those who had filed them. That's unusual, she told me. But when family members withdraw their concerns and claim it was a misunderstanding, we usually close the case. I completely understand, I replied. A month later, I was sitting on my deck with a cup of coffee, watching the sunrise over the ocean. The peace I felt was unlike anything I had ever known before. It wasn't just the absence of threat, it was the presence of true freedom. I had protected my home, my independence, and my dignity. But more than that, I had proven something Celine and Thaban never understood, that age does not equal vulnerability and that underestimating an older woman is a costly mistake. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Travers, this is Juliet Chen from the local community center. We heard you're new to the area and wanted to invite you to our book club. We meet every Thursday morning. I smiled, looking out at the endless ocean before me. I would love to meet Juliet. What time? After I hung up, I thought of Tiba somewhere deep in my heart. There was still pain for the loss of my son. But he had chosen Solon over his own mother. He had chosen greed over love and he had chosen manipulation over honesty. These were his decisions and he would now have to live with the consequences. As for me, I was living with the rewards of my own decisions, the courage to buy that house, the wisdom to trust my instincts, and the strength to fight for what was mine. As the sun rose fully over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, I took a sip of my coffee and smiled. At 60, I had finally learned the most important lesson in life, that true freedom comes not from being loved by others, but from respecting yourself enough to not let anyone take what you've earned. The ocean stretched out before me, vast and full of possibilities, just like my future.